Thank you, Dean, and good morning, class of 2017. I'm here to congratulate you and applaud your efforts. You've done so well. Your school, your parents, and you should all be very proud. 14 years ago today, I sat in this very audience, and I sat through this very speech, and I remember none of it. Like zero, nothing. So this prospect of me being up here now, trying to create a memorable speech, is making me very uncomfortable. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. How to persevere through uncomfortable moments, and that may in fact be the biggest source of your personal growth. And what better way for me to illustrate that than by sharing a series of uncomfortable events from my own personal life that took me from this audience to a leader at Airbnb. And this is the 8-minute version. I went to grad school right after Northwestern. A few years in, I've got a serious girlfriend. We have our first romantic trip booked. It's to London, a trip which basically cost my life savings. And by the way, for those of you going to grad school, you'll soon find out they don't pay you so well. About a month before my trip, my girlfriend came over to my apartment and broke up with me. I was really upset about it. But also, for the entire thing, I kept thinking, well, couldn't we just break up after the trip? It turned out to be a pretty easy decision for her. She booked a ticket to Hawaii with her London ticket. So what was I gonna do? Do I spend my entire life savings going by myself on a sad trip? Or do I crawl into bed and eat delicious Hot Pockets? As I was wrestling with this tough decision, I remember walking through a bookstore. By the way, that's a place that sells physical books. And in this bookstore, I saw a collection of budget travel guides. A guide to Spain catches my eye, and I had this glorious vision of backpacking through the glorious Spanish sun. So right there in that fateful Barnes & Noble, I decided I would travel the hell out of Spain, and I would do it alone. A few weeks later, I arrived in Madrid. I went to an internet cafe and saw that my ex-girlfriend's relationship status had just changed on Facebook. That hit me pretty hard. And then to make things worse, it was raining and my budget guide was drenched. This was not the Spanish sun I was looking for. I walked down the street and I checked into a lonely hostel and went on to have the worst night of sleep. This trip was not off to a great start. The next day, I went to Salamanca. I had decided to try couch surfing, where you crash with a local for free. My host was a random Belgian student who offered me a space. She was about an hour late to meet me, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time. But she finally showed up. We walked to her apartment. Upon entering, it became clear she didn't actually have any extra space, so I was gonna be sleeping on a hard floor with no pillows or blankets. Just as I'm starting to regret my decisions, she invites me to join her to go listen to experimental electronic music in the basement of a medieval building. After that, she takes me to 2 house parties and meet her friends. The next night, she taught me this awesome trick of buying €1 boxes of sangria at a local corner store and taking it to bars to save money. Over the next few days, she brings me into her community. I start to know people in town. They start waving at me. And throughout all of that, despite sleeping on the floor, I'm having the best night's sleep. So what began as a sad and uncomfortable solo trip ended in a rich, authentic experience and a sore back. I came back to grad school bright-eyed until I realized that I eventually have to find a job. Silicon Valley intrigued me, and I knew I wanted to join a tech startup rather than continue a career in bioengineering, which is what my PhD is in. So I wrote this impassioned email to Yelp, which had just launched, asking for an interview. Even though I studied computer science here, I was intimidated by the idea of applying for a software engineering position, as I had just spent the past 6 years in bioengineering. I get on the phone with a hiring manager who starts asking me the most basic computer science questions like, what is the complexity of quicksort? And I totally blanked. I can barely answer any of his questions and I'm super embarrassed. Obviously, I don't get a second interview and I felt really stupid. I could have answered those questions when I was fresh out of school. Also, I could just Google them. Then I proceeded to get rejected by startup after startup after startup. But I kept trying. With each rejection, I got better. Then one day, I learned about a little travel startup that no one has ever heard of called Airbnb, Airbnb for short. Everyone was telling me that applying to this company was a very bad idea. Why would a bioengineering PhD ever want to go work for a company helping strangers rent out their beds? This idea would never work, they said. But to me, it seemed plain as day that Airbnb was a great idea. After my trip to Spain, I felt sad because when I got older and had a family, somehow it felt weird to be crashing on the floor. Yet I had experienced how powerful it is to be hosted by a local, and I wanted to travel that way for the rest of my life. Airbnb not only made that possible, but the financial transaction meant that there were actual beds and the hosts were on time. It seemed obvious to me it could work. So despite the discomfort of going against everyone's sound advice, I was more determined than ever to get hired. Even though the company was only 8 people at the time, they put me through 15 hours of interviews. I even got grilled by someone I found out later was barely an intern. Thankfully, I got the job. That first year was one of the happiest of my life. New city, fun work environment, scrappy startup. I'm totally in my comfort zone, coding away. I'm learning how to build things quickly at startup speeds, and the company is growing faster than any of us ever expected. It's an exciting time. Then one day, all that got challenged. The founder pulled me aside and told me that one of our hosts had her home trashed by a guest. A bunch of teenagers caused thousands of dollars of damage. It's about to become national news. The look on his face told me this was a very bad situation, as the fundamental premise of trust that Airbnb was built on had just been violated. He asked me if I could lead the entire technology team over the next 2 weeks to ship new trust and safety features. I was instantly out of my comfort zone. I had never led a team before, especially not in a crisis, but I accepted the challenge. Suddenly, I was standing in front of a group of 20 of my peers who were now looking at me for direction. And inside my head, I'm thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing. Meanwhile, on Twitter, RIP Airbnb was trending. I was always hoping for the day we'd be trending, but I never expected it would be because of the demise of the company. And reading those tweets, it seemed like the world was hell-bent on proving that everyone had told me this idea wouldn't work. An intense 2-week sprint followed where we built and deployed over 40 new trust and safety features and did everything we could think of to improve the safety of the platform. I remember sleeping in the office, eating 3-day-old pizza, and drinking my body weight in coffee. We wanted to prove to the world that Airbnb works safely. For those few weeks, the sole focus for every person in the company was to make the platform stronger. We paid for full repairs to the woman's house and implemented a $1 million guarantee policy for all future stays on the platform. Since then, we've gone on to host more than 180 million guests. Imagine the entire population of the UK, Italy, and France combined staying over at your house. And as a result of the focus on trust and safety, less than 0.1% of all guest stays result in any kind of incident. And every day, millions of friendships like the one I made in Spain are formed. And as I've grown with the company over the past several years, I've learned that being a leader means, by definition, you are leading people into the unknown. And the unknown is always uncomfortable territory. And if it's not uncomfortable, you're not trying hard enough. So what does this all have to do with a graduation speech? If there is one thing you remember today, it's to embrace those uncomfortable moments. What may seem like a heartbreak, a job rejection, or a crisis may just be a transition to something bigger. Persevere through these uncomfortable situations, and that is where you'll find your growth. Thank you and good luck.